Very good morning to all of you, and welcome to the Dean's 70th Anniversary Lecture Series of the School of International Studies. Lectures are a part of celebration of the completion of the 70 years of our school, an initiative taken by our Dean, Professor Amitabh Bhattu. We trace the antecedents of the school to October 1955. That is when the Indian School of International Studies had come into being at Sapru House. And this is even before JNU came into being or was established in 1970. We have had 7 lectures so far on international studies, discussions on Nobel Prize in economics, international law, on India's development and its foreign policy. The last one was on China's foreign policy, and it was delivered by a Japanese from Tokyo. So we are very pleased to welcome today Professor Joseph Kéchichian, Senior Fellow of King Faisal Center for Research in Islamic Studies in Riyadh, and the CEO of Kéchichian Associates, a consulting firm that analyzes the Gulf region, the domestic and regional concerns. He will be speaking to us on West Asia under the second Trump administration. Perfect timing, Professor. With Trump taking oath, just taking oath, and he's being sworn in, and also the fact that this has been one of the key issues that has been troubling the previous US administration. Before we begin, I request Professor Amitabh Bhattu to please felicitate our guest.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I request Professor Amitabh Bhattu to take over and preside the lecture.
Thank you, Professor Preeti Singh, the convener of the Dean's 70th year lecture series, as well as the brand custodian of the school, distinguished faculty members, guests, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honor to welcome you to the 8th lecture of the Dean's 70th Anniversary Lecture Series, celebrating 7 decades of academic excellence at the School of International Studies, JNU. This milestone is not just a reflection of our past achievements, but also a testament to our ongoing commitment to the study of international affairs through a critical and diverse lens. Over these remarkable 70 years, SIS has established itself as a leading global institution for the exploration of international relations, characterized by a theoretical conceptual framework that challenges conventional wisdom. Sir, our school has engaged deeply with the necessity of building non-Western approaches to IR, fostering a nuanced understanding of the regions that shape our world today. Among these regions, the study of West Asia has always been part of our intellectual repertoire and has led to rich and diverse scholarship. When I was a student, this center was known as the West Asia and North Africa Center, now more simply as the West Asia Center. It was a cornerstone of our academic community of School of International Studies. It has produced some of the most distinguished scholars in the field, whose contributions, as you are well aware, and as all of us are aware, have left an indelible mark not only on our institution, but also on the global discourse surrounding international relations, and particularly West Asia. Let me take this opportunity to fondly remembering some of these stalwarts: the towering figure of Professor Muhammad Shafi Agwani, who not only served as Vice Chancellor of JNU, but also authored pivotal works, such as one curious work on Professor Kumaraswamy, you will remember, Communism in the Arab East. His insights continue to resonate with scholars and practitioners alike. We also honor the legacy of Professor Akil Haider Hassan Abidi, whose legendary expertise on Iranian and Persian civilizations and whose knowledge of Persian provided us with profound insights into the complexities of the region. We also would like to remember the contribution of the great Rajput scholar K.R. Singh, whose strategic perspectives in the Gulf region were unparalleled and who served also later on as a as a KPS Menon scholar in residence in Mahatma Gandhi University in Kerala, and his K.R. Singh's understanding continues to inform our understanding of the geopolitical dynamics of West Asia. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to host a lecture by Professor Joseph Kéchichian, whose insights are particularly timely given the current developments, as Professor Preeti Singh said, in West Asia and the implication of Donald Trump's presidency, the inauguration of which many of us saw late last night. Professor Kéchichian is a senior fellow at the King Faisal Center for Research and in Islamic Studies in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where he works on Arabian and the Gulf affairs, Arab foreign policy, and regional security. His academic journey began with a PhD from the University of Virginia. After a master's from the Monterey Institute, he has held several prestigious positions, including at the University of Virginia, University of California in Berkeley or Los Angeles. He was a Hoover Fellow at Stanford and an associate political scientist at the Rand Corporation. He also served as the honorary consulate of the Sultanate of Oman in Los Angeles. His illustrious career over the years has included a wide array of roles, including serving as associate editor of the Oxford Encyclopedia of Islam and a columnist for Gulf News. He has a large number of publications to his credit. His works include A Sultanate That Endures, Oman in the World from Qaboos bin Said to Hatem bin Tariq, the nationalist Al Saud advisor Yusuf Yassin of Saudi Arabia, from alliance to union, challenging facing Gulf Cooperation Council states in the 21st century. He has been recognized for his uh, contributions with several awards, a number of academic accolades, including the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Society of Armenian Studies in 2019. Today, as we navigate the intricacies of the web of conflicts that define West Asia, we will greatly benefit from this lecture. The conflicts in West Asia, as we are aware, are deeply entrenched, stemming from a multitude of factors, including, but not only, territorial disputes, sectarian divisions, and the influence of external powers. The Trump effect, as he himself described it, is already showing signs of being translated into the ground with perhaps a permanent ceasefire in the works on Gaza. But we will have to see what will be its implications beyond the Israel-Palestine conflict, to the breakdown with Iran, coupled with the civil war in Syria, the conflict in Yemen and Lebanon. As we engage in this important discourse today, I encourage each of you to reflect on the insights that will be shared by Professor Kéchichian, as they will undoubtedly contribute to our understanding of the complex realities of West Asia. Let us honor, therefore, on the 70th year of the founding of the School of International Studies, the legacy of scholarly inquiry established by our predecessors, especially those who had immersed themselves to studying the Middle East or West Asia and continue to contribute thoughtfully to the dialogue in international affairs. Thank you, and please join me in welcoming Professor Joseph Kéchichian. Sir.
Thank you, Professor Matu, and thank you, Professor Singh, for those kind words. I'm very happy to have this opportunity outside of the GIAN lectures that I am delivering for the whole week to also have an opportunity to exchange some ideas with faculty members and students who are interested in the new Trump administration and what kind of damage Mr. Trump is bound to do in the next 4 years. At the outset, I want to say two things so that everybody knows where I'm coming from. I'm a Democrat, not a Republican. I did not vote for Mr. Trump, neither the first time nor the second time. And even though we have family disputes at home because my brother and my sisters, they're all Trumpists. So you can imagine the conversations that we have at home. Usually it's not very good. That's the first point. The second point that I want to make is that 4 years will pass by very quickly. So rendezvous in 4 years. Now, the question is what kind of damage this man is going to do for the next 4 years. And he is bound to make some serious damage. We'll talk about it. Yesterday, as Professor Matu was saying, the circus is back in town. The show has started. And we now are going to be the bestest of the best, the most beautiful of the most beautiful, the greatest of the greatest. We're going to invade Panama. We're going to invade Greenland. We're going to invade maybe India. Why not? We'll come and take over. Because you've not been fair. So it's ours. We'll take it. This kind of mentality, obviously, is bound to create problems because a lot of people around the world are going to react in a very different way. Now, I'm going to concentrate on what I think will be Trump's Middle East policy this time around. When we refer to Trump in the first administration, when he was the 45th president, that's T1. T1. Now it's T2. So when I make references to T2, I'm talking about the next few years. So far, at least, it's really unclear to me how the new administration intends to deal with the conflicts of the Middle East and whether it will contribute to stabilizing the region. Now, what I'd like to do is talk for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, not more than that, and then open it up for conversation so that we can exchange ideas. This is not a formal lecture. It's more, I will throw a few ideas for you, and then we will talk about them. Given the hardliners in Trump's inner circle, it's conceivable that Washington will adopt a much more confrontational stance towards Iran. Iran is target number one, as far as I can tell. Indeed, the president-elect, now the president, took what was already a tougher line with Tehran during his first term in office by revoking the nuclear agreement, the so-called JCPOA, if you remember. Initially, this policy complemented the interests of Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf countries, which obviously were very much afraid of Iran as a potential nuclear neighbor. However, after Iran's allies had carried out a drone and missile attack on Saudi oil facilities in September 2019 on the Abqaiq oil fields, which temporarily had almost lost 25% of Saudi oil production after that one attack, Riyadh changed course. The attack clearly demonstrated the kingdom's vulnerability, not least because the United States, as protecting power, refrained from responding direct military response towards Iran. Since then, the Gulf countries in general have pursued good relations with Iran, but as we have seen in the past several months, things have changed throughout the Middle East region. Iran and Russia have lost in Syria, they've lost in Lebanon, they've lost with the Palestinians, with Hamas, and they probably are going to lose with both Iraq and Iran in the next term. Now, Trump's plans with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict specifically, I think, could also create problems with the Gulf countries. Obviously, Trump now you remember that Trump was known for his Abraham Accords, the peace agreements that he had created or facilitated, let's say, between Israel and several of the Arab countries, including the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and the Sudan. Now, of course, the big item, the most important country to add to the Abraham Accords list would be Saudi Arabia. But the Saudis are clear about this. There will be no peace agreement with Israel unless there is a Palestinian state, which obviously the Israelis don't want. Is that, I think we all agree that that's what the Israelis have in mind. They don't want to have a Palestinian state. In fact, Netanyahu's plan and the extremist plan is to make sure that the almost 2.5 to 3 million Palestinians who are living on the West Bank are all kicked out. Gaza is finished. I mean, how can you live in Gaza now? The kind of barbarism that we have seen during the past 18 months in contemporary history has not been duplicated anywhere. Ethnic cleansing in the best tradition of the term, real ethnic cleansing. Just to imagine that every day there are 8 children that lose their limbs. Every day. Think about that for a second. Potentially they are terrorists, of course, so you better kill them now before they grow up to become terrorists. So therefore, Mr. Trump, the first challenge that he's going to have to deal with the consequences of what has happened with the Palestinian issue. So Iran is number one as a target. The second conflict that he has to resolve, obviously, is the Palestinian question. And I'm not sure whether he is capable of doing anything about that. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, is supposed to go to Washington very, very soon, in the next couple of weeks, apparently, according to what I read, to negotiate with him. Now, there is a third element that is important. The Biden administration, following on the previous Obama legacy, if you would like, had thought of turning east to essentially ignore the Middle East and focus on China, focus on Asia, if you would like, what they called pivot to Asia. Of course, Obama did not do it, but pretty much Biden did. Biden was not interested in the Middle East. He really was not. He declared himself to be a Zionist, which of course is a contradiction when you are a practicing Catholic. I don't understand how the two of them go together, but that's in his mind. Apparently it does. But Trump will be interested in the Middle East, not because he cares about Arabs or Muslims, not because he cares about Jews. He does not. He cares about business. He cares about money. He cares about building towers that will have his name perpetually. In fact, in Saudi Arabia, in Oman, in the UAE, there are all these towers that are being built now to honor him. And of course, he gets royalties because his name is being used. So therefore, the focus is going to be on the Middle East. And of course, as we all know, Mr. Trump is not very good on multilateralism. He does not believe in Europe. He does not believe in NATO. He does not believe in ASEAN. He doesn't believe in any of those things. Yesterday, on one of his first executive orders, he withdrew from the Paris Accord. He's apparently going to withdraw from the World Health Organization. Remember, the World Health Organization was not fair to him during the COVID-19, poor guy. He really meant well, but it was all whose fault? WHO really did a bad job on him. They wanted to bring him down. There is a conspiracy against him. Don't you understand that there is a conspiracy against this beautiful man? The man is so beautiful, and everybody is against him. Can you believe that? That's his mentality. That's the way. That's the logic that he has, which children in kindergarten will understand, because we're talking at that level. We're at the kindergarten level now. But the third, as I said, this pivot to Asia did not occur. Now, it remains to be seen what Mr. Trump is going to do with China. Now, he has spoken about tariffs. His big thing is tariff. Everybody has been unfair to the United States. Everybody. Everybody has taken advantage of the United States. Of course, the United States is perfect, makes no mistakes, treats everybody fairly. We are decent. We don't invade countries. We don't kill people. We respect everybody. The rest of the world is made up of angry anti-Americans. Everybody hates us. Why do they hate us? We're so good. Why do they hate us? Now, with the Chinese, however, Mr. Trump has in President Xi Jinping, he has a real leader. He has to confront a real leader. They're trying to find language between the two of them, but the Chinese, as you Indians know better than most, are very patient. They wait for centuries before they do anything. They're not in a hurry. And they are long-term. They look at the long term. Now, the United States and China are competitors, and they're competitors in the Middle East. They're competitors in the Arabian Peninsula. I will say a few words more about this to make it clear. Today, the Arab Gulf countries export their oil mostly to Asia. China is the number one importer, number one. And the Chinese economy is the second largest economy in the world, about to become the first. In the next few years, it will pass the United States in terms of raw GDP and all the numbers that one can think of. You can make a list of them. Of course, it doesn't mean that the Chinese are going to take over the leadership of the planet, because the Chinese military is still relatively weak, even though they are making large progress. They are really building up, but it's still not at the same level. It will take another maybe decade or two for the Chinese to come up militarily. I'm talking militarily at that level. But obviously, the competition has already started. And for the United States to essentially break the bones of the Chinese, what better way than to control the energy resources of the Middle East? To deny it to the other guy. Yesterday, in one of the conversations, somebody asked me about the rules of power. My response, my theory of power is very simple. I'll repeat it. For those of you who were here, forgive me, who were here yesterday, forgive me for repeating this. But the first rule of power, if you have it, you keep it. The second rule of power is you deny it to the other guy. The third rule of power, you start back at number one. There are no two ways about going this. Power is an ugly business to be in. This is ugly business. So therefore, the United States and China are going to be in confrontation, and we'll see what Trump does over the next few years. And I think that the Middle East will be the arena where they will fight this out. Now, should Mr. Trump try to pressure Saudi Arabia and the UAE and other countries to loosen or even abandon economic ties with Beijing, I think that the Saudis and the other Gulf countries will say no to that. Trump will also plan to have an expansive oil policy, oil and gas production, another burden that will be placed on the Gulf countries, simply because the same logic applies as well for him, for Trump, who is anti-European, even though he is from German descent. He wants to break NATO. He does not believe in NATO. At one point, he threatened to withdraw from NATO. But now, of the war in Ukraine, that's the question that everybody is asking. What is he going to do about Ukraine? Will he pull out of Ukraine? Will he allow Russians to win the war? As I'm sure all of you are following, the war is not going very well for either side, for either the Russians or the Ukrainians. This is a stalemate, World War I style war that's going on. Eventually, the war will end. Somebody will have to stop this nonsense that's going on. Already, several 100,000 people have been killed. But can Trump lose Ukraine? That's a good question that people ask. You see, what happens when you become a president of the United States from day one? This is day one. Of course, he promised that within 24 hours he would solve the Ukraine problem. I'm waiting until tomorrow because 24 hours will pass to see whether the war in Ukraine is finished. Chances are that he will not be able to live up to his promise, but you know, it depends what God decides to do with him, because he said God appointed him as president of the United States. God saved him to become president. So any leader that has a direct telephone conversation with the Lord, that's a problem. That's a real problem, because you and I don't have that kind of conversation. You know, the Lord doesn't talk to me, or sometimes talks to me, but I don't listen. I'm a poor listener. But apparently with him, it's different matter. So therefore, we'll see what he's gonna do with Ukraine, whether or not he'll be able to manage this. Again, the same logic with China, namely that this is his opportunity to control the European countries as much as possible. This is, in my humble opinion, the only victory of the Biden administration. The only victory that Biden scored was to actually regain full control over Europe. The Europeans now they cannot function, even though they should. They should become independent. They should spend more money to defend themselves. They should defend Ukraine, and they are going to do this. But I don't need to remind a distinguished audience of academics that military buildup does not occur within 1 year or 2 years. It takes several years. It takes a generation to build up, to build the infrastructure, to build the equipment, to build the munitions, to build all the things. It takes a long time. If the Europeans decided, for example, today to start, as the Germans have allocated approximately $100 billion for the next 20 years or so to build their military, if they start today, apparently they've started, it will take at least 10 years for them to be up to par. Meanwhile, what happens to Ukraine is a big issue. So Trump will have to make a decision on that, whether or not he's going to end this war and on whose terms. Now, all these conspiracy theories exist about Trump and the Russians, whether they have compromised on him. Apparently, in one of his previous lives, Mr. Trump was in Moscow in one of the hotels, and the Russian administration has all these videos with loose women who entertained him. Apparently, all of this being compromised. Who knows? I mean, this is what we hear. Whether it's true or not, nobody knows these things. But don't underestimate the fact that Mr. Putin was a former KGB agent. This is what he does for a living. Just because he's the president of Russia doesn't mean that his methods have changed. So therefore, we will have to wait and see what kind of relationship he's going to build with Trump, and Russia and Putin are going to build between the two countries, whether or not they're going to agree with each other. And again, whether the dispute will be over the Middle East as well, because the Iranians are very close to the Russians now. And Mr. Trump is opposed to the Iranians. So therefore, there's going to be a clash between Trump and Putin over the Middle East as well. We'll have to wait and see whether that happens. Two final points, and then I will stop. Yeah. I was reading this article written by Muhammad Barhouma, a journalist, a prominent journalist, a few months ago, and these are the following points that he raised, which I will. There are 4 points that he raised, which I will throw in front of you, and then we can talk about. What is Mr. Trump going to do in the Middle East? The first thing he's going to probably do is to expand the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords will have to be improved upon. And as I said, Saudi Arabia is on top of that list. Will Saudi Arabia join the Abraham Accords? If I'm a betting person, and I'm going to go on the line here in front of all of you, you're going to be my witnesses. And when I'm wrong, remind me that I'm wrong. Saudi Arabia is not going to join the Abraham Accords. Mohammed bin Salman is not going to sign on the dotted line. Unless there is a Palestinian state, there will be no recognition from from Saudi Arabia of Israel. That's number one. Number two, will Mr. Trump reach a deal on Iran? Will, of course, successive American presidents have always said that they will not allow Iran to become a nuclear power. I'm going to go so on the line here in front of all of you. Remind me when I'm wrong. Iran will become a nuclear power. Iran will become a nuclear power. And this is going to create problems down the line. Will the West to become a nuclear power? The hardliners on both sides are going to try to push strings as much as possible. And Mr. Netanyahu in Israel is going to do everything in his power to push the United States into a war against Iran. Mr. Trump says he doesn't want wars. He's a man of peace. He loves peace. It's beautiful. Peace is beautiful for him. The best of the bestest. That's the term he uses, even though it's not English. But that's the term he uses. Settling the Ukraine war. Will he be able to settle the Ukraine war on top of the Arab Gulf countries? And final point that Mr. Barhuma revises is that he wants to revive the US economy and counter China, as I have said, with all these tariffs that are now in preparation. Now, of course, what I did not say, and I will close with this, what I did not say is that Mr. Trump, in his wisdom, wants to include Canada of all countries as part of the United States. Now think about that for a second. Canada is a neighboring country of the United States. It is the largest, the longest unprotected border between any two countries on this planet. You can actually walk from the United States to Canada if you want to. A lot of people do. And Canada is not part of the United States. But let's assume for a second that Canada becomes the 51st state of the United States, right? Let's assume for a second. I got news for Mr. Trump. It will become the most powerful state in the Union. Canada is not a small country. It's a huge country with huge resources. He complains that they're importing cars and milk. He's big on milk. I don't know. For some reason, he does not like milk, and especially Canadian milk. He does not want Canadian milk. Our cows are more beautiful. So he wants our cows to produce, our beautiful cows must produce our milk. He does not want any. Now, of course, we're joking about this, but it's not a joke. It's very serious business. And Middle Easterners in general, unfortunately, like people around the world, have fallen for this man. A lot of people have fallen for this man. They're mesmerized by him because he's a good talker. And he can persuade a lot of people very easily. In the Middle East, there will be problems. In T2, T2 will not be like T1 in the Arab world, in the Muslim world. There will be lots of problems. Muslims forget, unfortunately, I remind them this, but they forget that T1 had a ban on Muslims entering the United States for about a year. If you were a Muslim, you could not even enter the United States without showing a white paw. It was awful. In fact, most Middle Eastern students who are registered right now in the United States received a couple of weeks ago, before the election yesterday, before the inauguration yesterday, received notes saying, make sure to come to the country before election date, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know whether you'll be allowed back in. So therefore, I think that Middle East in general will be in a period of tension for the next 4 years. But as I've said at the beginning, and I will stop here, 4 years will pass by quickly.
Thank you very much, Professor Kéchichian, for that fantastic overview of West Asia and what might happen with Trump 2.0. Let me begin by being, in this case, the devil's advocate or Trump's 2.0's advocate.
I love the devil. Go ahead.
One, 4 years might seem like 40 years. Will be maybe the longest 4 years that you've experienced. But let me fundamentally question the underlying assumption that the leaders of West Asia will have greater agency during Trump 2.0. So let me also begin with the assumptions of questioning the assumption that Trump will be subject to blackmail. A convicted felon who has been alleged to have committed rape and crimes of other uh, serious nature, there's very little that any country, including the United States, can do to him or Trump 2.0 to blackmail him. More pictures, more videos, more evidence. It's not going to bother him. It's not going to bother his electorate. I don't think Putin digging into his past is going to impact on Trump's ability or his space within the American system, which is really, given the fact that he may well control, is controlling the Republican Party, but control, frankly, all the three arms of government, including the Supreme Court, through many of the justices that he appointed last time, means he may be the most powerful president in the history of the United States, at least in the last 100 years, or at least since Ronald Reagan. Second, all these leaders of the that you give examples of, MBS probably has more to hide than Trump, and how much agency he will have to really not sign on to the Abraham Accords, even if it doesn't guarantee a Palestinian state. We'll have to wait and see. I frankly see MBS is much more fragile, and given his reformist, modernist impulses, I would suspect that he will probably do as he's told. The fact that you had a limited hostage exchange suggests that Bibi Netanyahu probably has also less agency. Then, in terms of Iran, you have a reformist, Masood, what's his name? Yeah. Who is unlikely to go nuclear, given the consequences that for his own constituency, but also for the broader region. Frankly, I do not see. I see Trump, given his portrayal, not just his portrayal, his ability to act like a madman, which is the Trump impact, which is to suggest that I can do what you think may be irrational or what you think I will not be moderated. I will do exactly as I please and I will demonstrate that I will do it. I think those madman impulses might precisely be the bitter pill that the Middle East or West Asia will have to swallow to recognize that this atavistic rivalries running thousands of years, they're past their shelf life, and they have to find organic solutions or let Trump do it for them. I am being the devil's advocate, as I said. I am ready to be challenged, which I am sure I will be. Professor Kumaraswamy, would you like to begin by challenging both the speaker and the chair? Okay, let me open it up and please be as provocative as Jane has taught you to be. Yes, sir. Yeah, get a mic if you can. There's a roving mic somewhere. Speak into the mic because you're being recorded and identify yourself.
Thank you, sir, for the amazing lecture. Myself, Kéchichian, PhD candidate in the Center for Justice. So I have two questions and one comment to me. First one, America is the dominant presence in the region. In security-wise, we can see the Central Command and many US military bases around. So as far I understand, in the recent years, by the formation of bodies like I2UT, India, Israel, US, UAE, America is trying to subcontract the security matters to its perceived regional partners like Israel, India, UAE. So first question is that what will be the attitude of Trump administration towards I2UT? Second one, Saudi Arabia is a dominant player in the region. And in the last year, I came to know that an agreement is being negotiated between Saudi Arabia and America, which is the Strategic Alliance Agreement, SAA, which involves high-level American protection to Saudi Arabia and assistance in civilian nuclear projects in return for Saudi's close alliance with America. So what will be the status of SAA under Trump administration? And lastly, a comment to make. You said about the Trump's compromise issue. Of course, it's a national security issue for America. But in American political context, I think, as per my limited knowledge, I came to know that the Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has a controversy in Ukraine. It's one gas deal, as well as his laptop has some secret, another compromise. So, do you think Trump has a special some fault, or Biden also have that? His son is a big business for US national security.
I mean, Biden has forgiven all his family members now. Would you like to take a few questions?
It's up to you.
Yeah.
It's the way you like.
We'll take a few questions and come back to the distinguished speaker. Yes, Manish. Mr. Manish Taradi.
Let me in fact go a step ahead and in fact play not the devil's advocate with the devil. Trump immediately after the Israel Hamas deal claimed that look, I mean, just before coming to office this has happened, so he claims to have influence on that deal. So how do you see Trump coming to office yesterday? The second question, sir, can you identify areas of convergence between obviously Saudi Arabia and Trump 2.0? I'm sure there are, I mean, you pointed out, okay, no to Abraham Accords and all of that, but I'm sure there are some areas of convergences between Saudis and Trump 2.0. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ritvik and I'm a second year student in Masters of International Relations. Sir, pending Senate confirmation, we still don't have any update on that. A Fox News reporter named Pete Hegseth is going to be the Defense Secretary of the United States, a man who cannot name any country that is in ASEAN. Seeing that that person is going to probably head the defense policy of the United States for the foreseeable future in the Trump administration, how will that impact the politics of West Asia?
Yes, sir. Ma'am.
Sir, I'm Janvi Deswar, a research scholar from Center for European Studies. Sir, you mentioned that while the US would want Arabian states to pull away from China, but they would not do so. So, why do you think so?
Yes, sir.
So myself, Arun Kalam, PhD candidate at the Center for West Asian Studies. So my question is, United States have the policy towards Israel, and they also have the policy towards the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Does they have any policy towards the Palestinians, whether it's Trump, Obama, or any administration? And the second question is regarding the normalization between Israel and the Saudi Arabia. And last year, before the attack of Hamas, Mohammed bin Salman was giving interview on, I think, Fox News that we are very close, we are getting closer day by day. So, how can you more elaborate more? As you said that he will not sign the agreement until unless the Palestinians will be declared. Thank you.
Okay, let me try to answer some of these questions. Obviously, we're talking about the next 4 years could be, as you said, very long. But there are only 24 hours in a day. And Mr. Trump can make so many mistakes in 24 hours. And he will make a lot of them. I am pretty confident, based on what T1 is as a model. All of a sudden, people expect Mr. Trump to change and be different from what he was during the first term. I remind you that this man is relatively advanced in age, and you don't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm not saying he is an old or dog. He is the president of the United States now. He has a lot of power, and even though the United States is a country of institutions, nevertheless, the rest of the world has got to deal with this man because of what he represents. He is the president of the most powerful country on earth for the time being. Now, you're right when you say that he has appointed all these people at the Supreme Court. He can get away with a lot of his desires in the cabinet, appointing people, whether they are qualified or not, like Mr. Hegseth and others. They're not qualified, of course. But remember, in the first administration, they were not qualified either. And even at that time, the first Secretary of State in T1 was the former chairman of Exxon Corporation, Mr. Tillerson. And remember what the word that he used to refer to Mr. Trump. He used the F word to refer to the President of the United States. And he said, the F moron. I mean, this is the former Secretary of State of the United States who spoke that way. And the former Secretary of Defense, General Mattis, essentially resigned because he couldn't get along with T1 at that time. Whether the new team, even if he is backed by the Supreme Court, and even the Congress of the United States now is beholden to him, all the senators and all the congressmen are like lapdog, candidates trying to ingratiate themselves to him. All of these people, see, in politics, the beauty of politics is that politicians are ready to change at any moment's notice. The beauty of politicians is that they have no principles. Politicians have no principles. They will change when it's convenient. And of course, we're talking about 4 years, but the test will come in 2, because there are midterm elections. As you know, the American system, every 2 years, the House of Representatives in its entirety submits to new elections, and a third of the Senate submits to elections as well. So therefore, the test will come in 2 years. So the next 2 years are going to be tight. Now, who knows what's going to happen between now and the next 2 years? Maybe COVID-20 will come. 24 or 25. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what kind of crisis is going to emerge someplace around the world? Who knows what's going to happen to the Ukraine war, whether the war is going to expand in Europe, whether Mr. Putin is going to take advantage of the fact that he has an indecisive president in Washington, D.C., and God forbid, I am not predicting or anticipating this, but I am thinking the worst case scenario. What if, for example, Russia invades Finland? Finland now is part of NATO, which means that World War III could be on the verge, because NATO has to defend all of its members under Article 5. So therefore, even though he is happy at home, he is now able to do whatever he wants. I think his focus is all over the place. He himself is not clear as to what is it that he wants, what he wants to accomplish. And presidents, from the moment that they enter the White House, they think of their legacy. They think of their legacy. They're going to build a museum. Those of you who have been to the United States and visited presidential museums know what I'm talking about. For those of you who have not, it's worth your time. It's a good experience to go, for example, outside of Los Angeles, to go to Simi Valley and visit President Ronald Reagan's museum and library. Presumably all of his papers are there, and researchers can go and have access to the unclassified documents that are kept there. But it's a museum as well. There is a replica of of the Oval Office that you can go and see. There is Air Force One that has been retired. You know, you can take pictures on the door of Air Force One. You think that you're the president of the United States. Of course, you have to pay $45 for the privilege. Things like that. So presidents always think of legacy. So we will see what his legacy is going to be. What is it that he wants to accomplish? And which one of these crises is he going to manage? T1 was not good at managing crises. We will see what T2 will do. Now, he has taken credit, of course. Somebody asked me about Hamas. He has taken credit for the deal. Of course, he will take credit for it. Why wouldn't he take credit for it? In Arabic, there is an expression that says, "Kil shi balash katar minno." Everything that's free, add it. Of course, he will take credit. He didn't do anything about it. So give me credit. I did a beautiful plan. It was a beautiful plan. Nobody thought about it except me. So that's his logic. Now, what is he going to do with the Arab Gulf countries, with Saudi Arabia? Will Trump make deals? And what kind of deals will he make other than building towers? Look, the United States, in T1, the first country that Trump visited was Saudi Arabia, as we all know. And of course, traditionally, when an American president is elected, the first trip that they do is to go to Ottawa, to Canada. But obviously, we're not going to go to the boondocks of Ottawa because it belongs to us. So why would we go to our own home, right? We're going to invade Canada. And the reverse is also true. Every time there is a new prime minister in Canada, the first place that they go is to visit Washington, D.C. It's been going on for a couple of hundred years, but things have changed now. What is he going to do with Mohammed bin Salman? I'm not sure who said it, but Mohammed bin Salman is a pragmatic man. He will have to make deals. He will have to make deals, no question about that. But I would venture, and I'm on record here. This is being recorded, right? I'm being on record here. You correct me when I'm wrong. Tell me, Kéchichian, you don't know what you're talking about. I've been told that before. It's not new. He cannot make deals. Mohammed bin Salman cannot make a deal with Donald Trump over the Palestine question. He cannot recognize Israel. It's not a free lunch. He will pay a price if he did that. And the price will be very heavy. Saudi Arabia is not ready for that. And Mohammed bin Salman is first and foremost a Saudi. And he wants to make sure that the interests of Saudi Arabia come first. The same can be said about Mohammed bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi. The same can be said about Sultan Haytham bin Tariq in Oman. And you go down the list of all these individuals. And why would they make a deal if they cannot get something back? And remember, as I've said before, Arab Gulf countries now have a variety of options available to them. Their relationships with the rest of the world, their relationship with China, their relationship with India, their relationship with European powers. They are spreading their wings wide so that they're not beholden to any one country. It's true that the United States is still primus inter pares. It is still the most powerful defender. It is still the military backbone that defends this country, Saudi Arabia and the UAE and the others. But there are other options available. So time will tell. We will see what will happen. But I'm not one of those individuals that says Mohammed bin Salman is going to go crawling to Donald Trump and say, whatever you want, I'm available. Just tell me where to sign. Where's the dotted line? He's not going to do that. In my view, he's not going to do that. About the cabinets and the competences and all that. You know, there are only 9 cabinet officers in the United States government, only 9. But the president and his team, they appoint about 1,400 something. I don't know the exact number, but they appoint about 1,400 officers in the government. From State, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy, for Defense, etc. It's a huge list. And obviously, he's going to bring his own people. But in a bureaucracy like the United States government, where you have a few million people that work in the government, 1,400 people are not going to make a difference. Plus, there is a we did not talk about this, but I want to raise it for your consideration. And I want you to give this some real serious thought about the role of the media and what the journalists are going to do in the next 2 to 4 years. Now, the media, they love Trump because he's controversial. And people watch television, people buy newspapers to find out about his latest idiosyncrasies, because that's so palpable. You know, they can enjoy the show. It's a show. Now remember, I don't need to remind you that Mr. Trump, before he ran for president the first time, had a very popular television show, right? The Apprentice, right? And was it The Apprentice? Yeah. He's a Hollywood product, and the media loves that. Now, having said this, he also had confrontation with leading stars of the media. And when I say leading stars of the media, now, even though Mr. Trump is a pseudo-billionaire, he pretends he has a lot of money, although he has a lot of debt. He doesn't have any money. But he has his name, and he markets his name. His debt, of course, he's a convicted felon, as you've said. And a convicted felon is somebody not to look up to, as far as I'm concerned. But nevertheless, the media will applaud him. The media will find him to be very sexy and very interesting and very appealing. Some of these media stars on Fox News, on ABC, their salaries are astronomical. Sean Hannity makes $10 million a year. He has his private jet. He moves around. He's wealthier than Donald Trump. Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and all these guys who were sitting yesterday in the dais behind him. You know, imagine where the level that we've sank to, where we have these pseudo nationalists who pretend to know something about the interests of the country. All of these people are manipulating the media, and everybody has a social media in their hands. Everybody has a smartphone in their hands, and everybody thinks that this is the future. And remember that Mr. Trump, T1, used to come down from the private offices, private home in the White House to the office at noon. He woke up in the morning and started watching TV and answering his phone and playing on Twitter and all that. He worked in the afternoon only. And from about 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, he didn't bother the rest of the time. Most of the time, he was calling on the phone. He was telling stories to people, asking questions, and so on and so forth. I know I'm over time.
No, not at all.
One final point. One final point, and I will stop. So therefore, this media is going to play a very important role. We will have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see whether the media will tolerate in T2 what they tolerated in T1. If they play along with him for pure entertainment purposes and nothing else, the media will not have any pretension to do anything right. All they care about is the bottom line for them. Make no mistake about that. Then obviously we're going to have problems down the line. And to which I say, God help us.
Thank you. That's fascinating. The only question which I have is that you're assuming, Professor, that the fundamentals will not change, which is that only 1,000 people will enter the new establishment as part of the patronage of Trump. Not the fact that you may have Elon Musk and not Vivek Ramaswamy now, because he's going to run for governor of Ohio, that you have Musk demolish what now has become popularly described as a deep state, but the establishment. And secondly, remember also, if you're going to look at uh, Trump's campaign speeches, one of the speeches which the Democrats made a great deal about, but no one talks about, rightly so right now, is Trump said, get us to the White House on 4th of November and you will not need to elect us anymore. Suppose there's a fundamental change that you actually have the possibility of a third term for the presidency for Trump. Remember, in a facetious analogy, when you talk about T1, T2, T3, T1 is the slowest airport terminal in Delhi. T2 is slightly better. T3 when you can really fly.
Yeah, but the Constitution of the United States forbids a third term
Yes,
for the president.
But if there is
So
a
yeah,
constitutional amendment,
unless the Constitution is changed.
yes,
I
that's
know.
what I'm saying. If there's an
I
amendment,
know.
Professor Varun Sani.
Thanks a lot. Great. Because I'm way back here. I'm sorry. You can't see me. I can stand if you want.
That's fine. Don't worry. I can hear you.
Okay. As long as you can hear me, that's all. That's needed. Thanks a lot. This was a great talk. I'm Varun Sani. I think international politics here. One of the questions I wanted to ask, in fact, Dean has just asked you, which is about, in fact, a real kind of thinning out of the permanent, federal employee, as it were. That, this new Department of Government Efficiency would actually seriously cut down, the human resources that are kind of the permanent employees of the federal government, and that therefore the number of appointees over time may be at least an order of magnitude, maybe 2 orders of magnitude more than the current sort of presidential appointment. That's just sort of something to sort of, love to sort of have a sense of that. But the other sort of thing that I wonder if you would sort of speculate for us about is sort of the notion that some of these plutocrats who are now sort of the tech plutocrats who are now sort of behind sort of Trump, including Peter Thiel and others as well. That the real game plan is to sort of get JD Vance in at some stage. That Trump may in fact not know that he's basically fallen for a massive pawn in that sense. That Vance, somebody like him, would never have been electable. Trump was, but that these guys are now going to sort of engineer Trump's departure and sort of somebody else coming in. Is there anything to this scenario? And then what would that tell us about the federal government, about U.S. policy in general, foreign policy in particular, Middle East policy? So I wonder if you just play out these scenarios for us, given your understanding.
That's very challenging.
I'll just take a few more.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, please. Identify yourself as you should.
I'm Surya Prakash Notia, PhD student at Center for West Asian Studies. Sir, there is a rise of terrorism in Afghanistan. Taliban is becoming state, and similarly in Syria, the terrorist group is becoming state. Now, in this situation, sir, what is how Saudi monarchy or the monarchy in West region particularly how the monarchy is reacting to these kind of situations? Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We want the reason we want you loud is so that you'll be captured on the audio of the camera.
Thank you for your great lecture, sir. I'm Nikhil Mugadi, a PhD student, third semester at the Special Center for National Security Studies here. I have two questions. One is, you suggested that the T2, like Trump's second administration, would try and control West Asia to deny it to China. So, in that sense, how would it how would Saudi Arabia or their vision 2030 as
or any other, it's not just for Saudi Arabia, like you suggested, it's for the larger Arabia as well. So how would they, be in contradiction with each other? How would it affect Vision 2030 and peace in West Asia? The second question is, you've proclaimed that you're a Democrat, but how do you reconcile being a Democrat and the debacles they have done in West Asia until today? Because most of West Asia, like I would say, at least to my understanding, Muslims in West Asia don't really want to go to USA if there was a good choice at home. So, like you suggest.
Okay.
We have one final and then we'll come back to the professor.
Faisal, I'm a PhD candidate at the Riyadh American Studies. So, sir, in the T2 administration, it seems that it will be now Marco Rubio as the Secretary of
Confirmation now.
Confirmation, and Michael Watts as National Security Advisor. And both of these gentlemen has a long history as an expertise in Latin America and all. So, I wanted to ask you that if these gentlemen will play a role that it will shift the focus of US from US has a major history of focus on the Middle East and Europe, and they play a role that US will shift its focus from West Asia to Latin America. Thank you.
In the inaugural speech, if you heard that, Trump says they'll take back the Panama Canal and declared all these criminal cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Let me also ask you one final question before you respond to the others, Professor. Is that one of the things that Trump mentioned yesterday is drill, baby, drill, that he's going to ask that all the possible drilling of oil to be started again. Now, will that increase or diminish American leverage in the Middle East, West Asia?
Those are all very challenging questions, obviously. And I'm actually mesmerized by the variety of concerns that you have, which indicates to me that you are as confused as I am, as everybody. We're all confused now. T1 taught us how to be confused. T2 is going to allow us to practice the confusion more and more. But I will try to clarify it as best as I can. For my own benefit, first of all, not just yours, but also for me as well. Now, the fundamentalists will not change. This is true. The fundamentalists are in charge right now. And the United States is a divided society, as we all know. The country is divided. But Mr. Trump pretends that he got a lot of votes, 71 million votes, as opposed to Kamala Harris, the more qualified candidate in these past elections. But misogyny is still what it is in the United States. Make no mistake about that. And the fact that that the assassination attempt on Mr. Trump's life really helped him a great deal, because who could argue when he said that God saved him so that he could become president? So therefore, for a lot of people, fundamentalists in general, this is something which is now ingrained, and he has already pardoned 1,600 convicted felons like him. He has pardoned everybody. In fact, Mr. Biden committed a mistake yesterday when he pardoned all these individuals around him, including Dr. Fauci and others. He should have pardoned Donald Trump. That would have been the way to go. But he is not the kind of foresightful leader. If he had pardoned Donald Trump himself, that would have not only confirmed the fact that this is a convicted felon, but it would have registered in history 100 years from now that this individual did a lot of damage to the institutions of democracy or democratization. There is no democracy in America. There is democratization. It's a totally different thing. Americans pretend that they are a democratic country. They have no idea what they're talking about, including me. It's democratization. But he could have done that, and he could have preserved the institutions of the country. Now, You've asked me also about the fact that the government is large and that Elon Musk and others want to reduce the size of the government. There are about 1.4 million workers in the federal government in the United States. For a population of 350 million, I'm not sure whether that's such a huge number. Besides, there is something to keep in mind. The President of the United States does not have the authority to spend a single dollar. The President of the United States does not control the budget of the country. That's the Congress's job. The Congress passes these laws, and therefore we will have to wait and see what happens in the Congress. Right now, the Congress is all Republican on both the Senate and the House, but there are lots of Republican candidates who are not necessarily pro-Trump. They are keeping their mouth shut now because of the changes that have taken place. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Don't assume that everybody wants to reduce the size of the government. One of the things that the president wants to do now is to eliminate the Department of Education. The entire Department of Education, he doesn't want it. We're already educated, so we don't need more education. I mean, we're at that level. He wants each state to have their own curricula. And the federal government, which does not get involved in the nitty-gritty, the federal government has the guidelines, essentially. And the states and the local school boards, they're the ones that make all the decisions at the local level. They don't make them at the federal level. But for some reason, he is very much opposed to the Department of Education because he thinks that the Department of Education is not doing a good job. So he wants to eliminate it. You notice that yesterday in his inauguration speech, he talked about the military and he said the greatest military in the world and so on and so forth. But he didn't say anything about reducing the size of the budget of the military, which is astronomical. It's almost, it's over almost $1 trillion. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's almost $1 trillion per year. Nobody is talking about reducing the budget at that level. But that's something which politicians will have to argue amongst themselves. Now, the rise of the plutocrats, that's also an important point. Somebody asked me about that. The plutocrats are there. In Russia, there are the oligarchs. In the United States, there are the plutocrats. Same thing. Same thing. One of them is more legal than the other. It has a nicer, to use a Trumpist expression, it's more beautiful. It's more beautiful. But I think that in the future, whether it is Vice President J.D. Vance that succeeds Donald Trump, or you have a Democrat that will come and break the system, could be David Newsom of California, the governor of California. It could be AOC in New York, the young lady who was a firebrand. We will see what happens. It's American politics is very fluid. It changes dramatically. And the proof is in front of us that 4 years after being defeated, which he never accepted, Trump was reelected. So that explains to you the fluidity. Plutocrat or no plutocrat, the system is such that it allows these kinds of dynamic changes in society. Now, somebody asked me about the changes in Afghanistan with the Taliban and whether the Arab monarchies will support them and whether or not, Mr. Trump is very upset that we left $1 billion worth of military equipment to the Taliban and we made a deal with the Taliban. The 20-year investment, presumably to change a little bit the behavior of the Taliban, especially towards women, they're all gone to naught. It's all finished. It's gone. What will Mr. Trump do about this, and whether or not he will put pressure on the Arab Gulf monarchies? Only 2 countries had diplomatic relations with the Taliban before, Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Pakistan.
Now,
And Pakistan.
only the 2 Arab countries.
Okay,
Pakistan
sorry,
is not an Arab country.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not-
But now they did not reestablish the kind of friendly ties that everybody would like the Taliban to have. The Taliban would like to have good relations, but that has not happened yet. So therefore, the Taliban are still in the woodshed. We will see what happens to them. The Taliban are their own worst enemies, as far as I can tell. They're not helping themselves, but that's their country. They can do whatever they want. Now, again, the question about China. As I mentioned, I'll repeat this. This is very important. Saudi reaction towards China will be different this time than it was the last time. Saudi Arabia has an interest in China now. And Mohammed bin Salman and Mohammed bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi and all the other Gulf countries, they are very much interested in what happens in Asia. And of course, India plays an important role in this as well, because as an alternative to the Silk Road, the Belt and the Belt Road, there is the effort to go from India to the UAE to Saudi Arabia to Israel and to Europe, right? There is that plan. Okay, it could happen. Politicians have all these plans all the time. A few years ago, there was a plan to export Russian oil via Turkey, Azeri oil via Turkey, Iranian oil via Turkey. None of that occurred. You know, there are lots of plans that are always thrown in front of people, and then we'll have to wait and see whether or not any of them materialize. Final question about Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is from Cuban descent, as you know, and he's been confirmed today. He is very pro-Israeli. In fact, in front of his office, there are two flags, the American and the Israeli, which is mind-boggling in the US Senate to have those two flags. But that tells you the power and the influence of the Israeli lobby in Washington, D.C. He will be very much interested in Latin America because he's a product of that. But I'm afraid that the same logic that they're using with Panama is not going to work this time. They're not going to be able to occupy Panama. They're not going to be able to take over Canada, take Greenland, eat this and that. That's not going to happen. There will be problems in Latin America, as far as I can tell, even though the president of Argentina, who was a fellow traveler in the Trumpist world, attended the inauguration yesterday. So did the Prime Minister of Italy, Madame Meloni, who has now become the spokesperson of the European Union with Trump. Apparently they get along and they like to do this with each other. You know, we are together. This is the new sign now. If you want to be friendly with Trump, you have to do this. It's beautiful. You see, it's beautiful.
Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll. Yes, you already asked. Please.
Sir, you already talked about the northern neighbor, but in Mexico there is a new administration under a president who is absolutely different from Trump, the complete opposite.
Excellent.
High approval rating,
Excellent.
a socialist and a woman. And Trump has
Excellent.
a big problem dealing with women leaders. Yes. Speaker Pelosi, for example, being major case, Senator Susan Collins, etc. So how do you see the shame-bound Trump equation?
Thank you for reminding me.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding me. This is very important. And I'm going to talk about drill, baby, drill.
Okay.
I will conclude.
Okay.
When you tell me when.
I think there are no. Yeah, Professor Kumaraswamy.
Thanks, Professor. A small question. In G1, you had a Kushner playing a lot of role in the region, and we have not seen him during the campaign. Do you expect him to come back and play a role in the, because that's going to be one thing Israel will be watching?
Say more.
Kushner, the son-in-law.
No, say more. And what do you mean by Kushner? I understood Kushner. In what way? What kind of role?
You know, if you look at the Trump peace plan, even Netanyahu could not have written.
Different from business, you mean?
Exactly. It's a business, and already he's continuing
Okay.
business deal with Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Probably he's going to come back and play a greater role in the region.
Okay. I got it. I got it.
Okay, over to you, Professor, for your concluding remarks.
That's it. I will try these three things and I will conclude. First, thank you for reminding me about Mexico. It's such an important country. And as you know, Mr. Trump wants to deport a lot of people, and he wants to even change the birthright of citizenship. There are now strict conditions that if you are born in the United States, it's no longer sufficient to get automatic citizenship. Of course, I'm an immigrant to the United States. I was not born in the United States. I was born in Lebanon, as you know. I've naturalized. I've become a naturalized citizen. So immigration is very dear to my heart. And I'll tell you, without the Mexicans in the United States, that economy will collapse in one afternoon. One afternoon. All the food that we Americans eat is collected by Mexican workers. People forget these things, and they're stupid when they forget it. And they don't value the work of millions of people who are struggling to make a living and send money to their families. Now, Mr. Trump is opposed to all of this. He thinks that the world, including you in India, by the way, you're emptying your jails and sending all these terrorists to us. So this is a new business, apparently, that he has discovered. All these countries are emptying their jails and send them to the United States, which is, of course, silly to say that. But it only takes a silly man to say silly things. So therefore, the relationship with Mexico is going to be very difficult for the next few years, very difficult. And the new president of Mexico, she's very capable, by the way, very capable. And she's Jewish, which is the beauty of it. Because she's going to come to Washington, she's going to be applauded by the Jewish community, yet all of these laptop pro-Trumpists are going to have a contradiction because of the immigration policies. So expect rock and roll. Rock and roll. Now, drill, baby, drill. Now, I don't know what goes into people's minds when they come up with drill, baby, drill kind of sentences. I don't know where these things come from. You have to have the kind of vivid imagination that it really mixes politics with irreality. Where are you going to drill? You're going to drill in preserved, environmentally protected areas. You're going to drill in Alaska, which is already being harvested. Where are you going to drill? We're going to rename, by the way, the Gulf of Mexico. Please. We're going to call it the Gulf of America. It's a more beautiful name.
Beautiful.
I mean, think about the infantile, the juvenile approach. It's a juvenile approach. I'm sorry, I get carried away sometimes. I apologize. I will conclude by answering Professor Kumaraswamy's question about Mr. Kushner, which really summarizes everything. Kushner, a businessman whose father was also a convicted felon, has learned his lesson. He wants to make money. He does not want to get involved in politics because he understood that politics and money in the Arab Gulf region will get you neither. So he preferred to go with the business. I hope, and I will close with this, I hope and I pray that the next 2 to 4 years will be relatively peaceful, although I expect a lot of trouble.
Thank you for a fascinating lecture, and also so patiently and so engagedly addressing all the queries and questions and clarifications.
My pleasure.
May I now request Professor P.R. Kumaraswamy to deliver the formal vote of thanks.
Thanks, Steve. First of all, we are grateful to the Dean for, allowing this process because we are getting the center's discussion out to the school level. So therefore, this is, you are getting the center into the much larger thing, and this is the 8th lecture in the series, and first of all, it's a great initiative, and we will continue that in that level. to take the handholding. That is our friend Priti Singh, who is doing this as a convener. We are grateful to you for immediately leading to this idea, and also the custodian of the brand ambassador or of the school. Thank you very much for doing this. And Shakti sir, thank you for making live streaming, because some of my students were saying that we cannot come, we'll watch it in their live. Thank you very much for doing this. As Professor Kéchichian is here, primarily or exclusively because of the GYAN program supported by the Ministry of Education. And also, we are also grateful to that he's here as a GYAN scholar. And when he was actually coming from Beirut, I almost gave up because of the flights were cancelled, all the things. I actually suggested to my chairperson that can we go online? And she's indefatigable. She said nothing doing, we will try everything possible to get Kéchichian in person. So grateful to Samina Hamid for this. I know any lecture you do, it's ultimately, it's not the how many students you have, how many audience are there, but basically your engagement with the subject. And therefore, we are grateful to all the students and the esteemed faculty members for being here. Finally, the hero of the day. And this is his third visit to India. And he came to the center in 2006. And 2016, we could not, because it's a very short visit. And this is the third visit, it's the second visit to the center. And he's coming literally from Beirut. And he did not even know that ceasefire was coming into force because he was flying. The first thing I told him was, at last, you brought some hope to the region. And probably he doesn't know that. Probably you learn it along the way. India is pro-Trump. Okay, at least a large number of the section of the Indian elite for a variety of reasons. And especially in the school, and the first thing you said was, I'm a Democrat. I said, oh God, I thought you will leave. Okay, you really made a very exciting thing. This is for a discussion. And if you have seen that, presentations are always very short, a lot of things on the question and answer session. And I think, this is going to be a model for all of us. I know it's not only what you say, how you say it with humor, sense of sarcasm and fun. And it's in addition to what you are sharing of your knowledge, it's actually right from the oval. It's not even 24 hours. He's yet to sign all his presidential proclamations and degrees and degrees. As it's unfolding drama, you really captured us and you've given us sufficient warning to us. These are the things which you should want. And we are very delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
And it's it's especially at the school level, we're grateful that you have the time. In addition to your hectic GYAN lectures for almost 14 hours, you have to finish it by Friday, and we are extremely grateful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.